Good morning, everyone. I'm Rahul Chatterjee from Cornell Tech, and this is a joint work with my collaborators from Cornell Tech, NYU, and Cornell University. So intimate partner violence, or IPV, is physical or sexual violence or stalking by an intimate partner, such as boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. IPV is a serious public health problem that affects a large fraction of people across the globe. As one study by the CDC in 2015 showed, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men in the US experienced IPV at some point of time in their lifetime. While we associate physical violence or assault with IPV, technology is playing a key role in recent days. As prior work shows that prior work with IPV victims and professionals who work with them report that abusers regularly exploit technologies to harass or control victims. One thing that came up multiple times was use of spyware tools in victims' devices. So spying or tracking intimate partner without their consent or knowledge is what we call intimate partner surveillance, or IPS. IPS can be a form of violence in itself, or it can facilitate other kind of violence like physical violence or sexual violence. As one of our prior work has pointed out, one case manager recalls an incident where an abuser kicked in the front door of the case manager by tracking the victim using a spyware app that he put in her device. The abuser got physically violent, and they had to call police. Now, spyware is a serious problem in IPV because abusers have physical access to the device. They know the access credentials of the device, or they can compel disclosure of them from the victims. And in some cases, they even own the device because they bought the device for the victim. And this is the only thing you need to install any third-party tracking software on the victim's device and track them. While prior work has given some anecdotal evidence of use of spyware, we did not know prior to our work what kind of spyware tools available in the web. What are the other resources abusers have? Or are the developers of these tools aware that their apps are being used for IPS? So we did a first in-depth study of the ecosystem of spyware that can be used for intimate partner surveillance. So we found out thousands of apps that are available on the web and even official app marketplaces that can be used for spying on intimate partner. Some of these tools are overt spyware. However, most of them are dual use. So dual use is these apps are built for some legitimate use cases, but their functionalities can be repurposed to spy on an intimate partner. We also found that there are abundant resources in the form of blog posts, videos, forums available for the users to conduct IPS. And developers of these tools are aware that their tools are being used for IPS, and in some cases, they actually condone IPS. We also did study with existing anti-spyware tools and find out that they don't actually flag dual-use apps as threat, and therefore not useful for IPV victims. In short, we showed that the existing spyware ecosystem is working in wrong direction by empowering abusers while failing the victims. So we begin our study with the following question: how do abusers find IPS apps? And it's not hard to find out that if you search for terms like how to spy on my husband in Google or any other search engine, you will find thousands, millions of hits. The hits include blog posts comparing different spy apps. It could be videos or how-to guides on how to use those apps to track someone, or it can be ad funnels, like these are basically blog posts talking about IPS and then direct traffic to a particular spyware app website. There are also, of course, you will find out several spyware app websites in searches. So this seems like if you search online, we'll find plenty of resources that abusers might find. The question is, how do we come up with the possible an exhaustive list of search terms that an abuser might search with? So for this, we observed that modern search engines, including Google, provide search recommendations in the form of search completion or related queries. So based on this observation, we build a searching technique we call snowball searching. It's basically you begin with a small set of queries, and then search those queries in a search engine, record the results, and as well as the recommendation provided by the search engine. We then add this search recommendation back to our query set after filtering out some of the terms that are absolutely not relevant for IPS, and then we iterate. We stop when we don't see any new queries recommendation, or we hit a maximum limit of 10,000 queries to the search engine. We applied this snowball searching technique on Google search APIs provided by Google Play Store and iTunes App Store, and discovered 23 spyware apps not available in any of the official app marketplaces, but can be used for spying on intimate partner. We also found thousands of apps available inside official app stores. So let's look at them in turn. For the off-store apps, they're shockingly powerful, as expected, as one of the apps succinctly present their capabilities as follows. It can track your location in real time. It can intercept every message, incoming and outgoing SMS, calls, app chats. It can remotely monitor anything, all the activities happening in the phone, including taking photos, videos, and recording audio. The app is completely invisible, and you don't need to root the device to get all these functionalities. These apps are, as I've shown, easy to find. They're equally easy to install and configure. And there are plenty of how-to guides available online to help abusers how to install those things. It takes less than 5 minutes of physical access to the device for an abuser to install and configure these apps. Once the apps are configured, there is no app icon in the victim's device, and it does not show any notification while it exfiltrates sensitive information from the victim's device. On the abuser end, however, it shows some fancy UI with neatly presenting all the data it has collected from the victim's device, and sometimes even gives comprehensive charts on victims' whereabouts. Well, all other off-store apps also have similar capabilities and UI, and this is not very surprising because there is nothing to stop them from being very dangerously spy. However, we also found, while searching for these apps, there are several links to apps inside Play Store that are supposed to be bound by developer policies. But as we found so many links that points to these apps, we started investigating what apps are available inside Play Store that can be used for IPS. So for this, we built a pipeline for discovering apps usable for IPS in Play Store. We did a snowball crawling of Play Store for 3 months and discovered more than 15,000 apps. Not all of these apps are relevant for IPS. So to remove these apps, we designed a supervised machine learning classifier that looks at the app's title, description, summary, and try to predict whether or not an app can be usable for IPS. To be sure, we also went over the list of apps that the machine classifier thinks as relevant for IPS, and we manually verified those lists and find out more than 3,500 apps available in Play Store that can be used for intimate partner surveillance. We did a similar study on Apple iTunes App Store too, but for only a couple of weeks, and discovered 451 apps that can be used for IPS. Now, these are a lot of apps available inside official app stores that can be used for IPS. So we went deeper and tried to look at what kind of apps are these. So we built a taxonomy of these apps. So these apps fall into 3 major categories. There are personal tracking apps, the apps that are designed for like Find My Phone and anti-theft, or the apps for recording your calls. There are also mutual tracking apps like Find My Family or Find My Friend, or couple tracking apps. And then we have this subordinate tracking app. They're basically employer to track their employees and parents to monitor their children. Now, we might be paranoid while flagging an app usable for IPS or not, but whenever we see an app, we consider an app as innocuous, we find out evidence in blog posts and forums and app reviews that these apps are being repurposed by some abuser to stalk on or spy on intimate partner. As an example, in one forum, an would-be abuser is looking for an app that he can install in his wife's phone and surreptitiously monitor her location. In response, another user suggests using Cerberus, which is available inside Google Play, and Cerberus has all the capabilities for a spying app. For example, it's completely invisible inside the app drawer, and you can record audio and take picture remotely. So Cerberus is not meant for spying. It's an anti-theft app that you use to use when your device is stolen. But it has all the capabilities of spying, and that's why people are using it for conducting IPS. This is what we call dual-use app. The apps that are built for legitimate purpose, but their functionalities are repurposed to spy on intimate partner. So this brings us, the whole landscape of spyware apps can be divided into two broad classes. There is one overt spyware apps, or these are mostly off-store, and they boast about their spying capabilities, and they can be used to spy on intimate partner. And the other category is dual-use apps, which are built for some legitimate purpose, but their functionalities can be repurposed for spying on intimate partner. And the worst is some of these dual-use apps are as powerful as the off-store overt spyware apps, and that's why equally dangerous for intimate partner violence. And this brings us to this question, like, are the developers of these apps aware that their apps are being used for IPS? Or are they even marketing these apps for IPS? Now, we did some initial study, and we have some circumstantial evidence, as well as some concrete proof for some developers. For example, some developers explicitly promote IPS. Like, they host explicit IPS content in their website. For example, one egregious example from HelloSpy, it's an off-store spyware app, and they host, in their blog post, they depict a person physically assaulting his intimate partner while describing that how they can use the spyware tool to find cheating spouse. Well, these are very explicit. We believe there are more apps available in the web and in Play Store. They're tacitly condoning IPS. For example, take an example of mSpy. mSpy advertises itself as a parental control or employee tracking app. However, we found several blog posts that talk about IPS and then exclusively link it to mSpy. Now, one might argue this, okay, probably the developers of mSpy are not controlling these blog posts. These are affiliates of mSpy. But it is hard to believe that the mSpy developers are unaware that their apps are being marketed for IPS. We also found several paid advertisements comes up in Google search and Play Store when you search for terms like track cheating boyfriend. In this case, track cheating boyfriend, we see Web Watcher is coming up as a paid advertisement. Now, Web Watcher is a mobile it's a parental control app supposed to be used to track the children, but they're being repurposed to conduct IPS. We also contacted several customer support of 11 apps, posing as an abuser who is looking for an app to surreptitiously monitor her husband. 9 of the customer support responded to our question, and 8 of them condoned IPS, replying in something in line with like, no, you're like ignoring the fact that we are going to use the app for IPS, and replying like, no, the app will be hidden in app drawer, or your husband will not be able to tell. Only one app admonished us against using their app for IPS. Now, these are not concrete proof, but these definitely indicate that some app developers are condoning IPS or marketing their product for IPS use case. So far, I've shown that there are thousands of apps available online and plenty of resources that guide abusers how to conduct IPS. And some of the developers are promoting IPS while others are tacitly condoning it. So after this, we disclosed our finding to Google. And we are happy to report that Google has taken steps to curb this problem. For some example, they have tightened enforcement in Play Store and removed all the couple tracking apps. They're also taking action against all the videos and apps that violate their policies. And also, they added restriction to ad serving and Play Store searches on explicit IPS terms. While these are great first steps, we need to remember that majority of the apps usable for IPS are dual use. That means they have a legitimate use case, and therefore, they will and should be available in Play Store and elsewhere. Nevertheless, those apps are can be used for our intimate partner surveillance, so IPV victims need some detection tool to figure it out whether or not these apps are being against them. So natural next step is we looked into the anti-spyware apps available in Play Store. We found out 40 apps that claim to have anti-spyware capabilities that include like brand name apps, Everest, Norton, McAfee, and also some of the apps that are not from popular developers but have very high install counts. We install these apps and with a subset of IPS-relevant apps and record their results. And the results are kind of depressing in the sense that none of the anti-spyware apps detect dual-use apps, which is also not surprising because dual-use apps are not necessarily malicious outside IPv context. But at the end of the day, the IPv victims are left with some really bad heuristics like this, like whether your battery is running out fast, or you think you are being spied on, or your phone is getting hot. These kind of heuristics are being suggested or advised to the victims in the field by advocates and police. And if you think that this is happening, then probably you are spied on and you should throw away your mobile phone. This is suboptimal in multiple levels and like it's not satisfying for security community. So in summary, we have done first in-depth study of the apps that are available for IPS. We found out thousands of apps available on the web and in application stores, as majority of those apps are dual use, and there are abundant resources available for abusers how to conduct IPS. Some developers of these tools are promoting IPS, while others are tacitly condoning IPS. And also we show that the existing anti-spyware apps don't detect dual-use apps as a threat and therefore not usable by IPv victims. Moving forward, we are collaborating with Google and Symantec to build one such detection tool such that IPv victims can immediately use those tools to find out whether or not they're being spied on. And our research also leaves us with a nice, interesting research challenge then for the security community. How can we build guidelines for honest OS and app developers so that their apps are not easily repurposed for IPS? You can get more information about our research on the website. And thanks for your attention, and I will be happy to take any questions.
All right, Jeremiah Blocky, Purdue University. Thanks for the interesting talk. I was wondering if you could comment briefly on any legal aspects of IPS and the use of some of these, I guess, dual-use apps in IPS.
I'm not a legal expert to tell whether or not this is legal to do it. So I would recommend we should talk to some advocates.
Hi, I'm Max von Hippel, University of Arizona, and I know that on iOS, the Apple App Store explicitly disallows apps which look for, in the background, your location without showing a very thick red bar on the top of the entire interface of the iPhone or iPad or whatever. And so I'm wondering, in terms of the apps that you saw that did appear to be tracking your location, whether or not it was quite visually clear in the user interface that they were doing so, or if not, if there was some other way that they were getting around that.
I'm not sure, but they are definitely not showing enough notification while working in the background. So yeah, either they are violating Apple's policy or they are not abiding by the rules that's set by the developer policies.
Hi, I'm Nina Taft from Google. That was a very good talk. I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned in the beginning. You mentioned you used a machine learning technique based on the description of the apps to filter down from your search process to something like 4,500 potential ones.
That's good.
I'm wondering if you could comment a bit more on the quality of that process, because I imagine there's probably a lot of false positive problems in there.
That's correct. Yeah, that's why we manually went over. So actually, I glossed over the details because we intentionally tried the machine learning to have less false negative rate, because missing an IPS-relevant app is dangerous. And we afford to have slightly more false positive rate, which then we later went over manually to prune the list. So machine learning was just used to reduce the number of apps we need to manually look at.
Okay. So do you have any thoughts on what kinds of mistakes happen in the false positives? Like what sorts of commentary will create a false positive?
One obvious mistake that I can remember was some apps, they claim to be something, but it does not provide anything. Or there are apps like Books that talks about cheating and catching, but it's, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yuchong Sun from Semantic Research Labs. Very interesting study. So I wonder, in your study, did you run into any of these apps that have this hidden logic? You know, the logic other than being advertised. Like, for example, instead of just intercepting for the intimate partner, they're also sending private information back to the developer of the app. If so, what is the percentage for such apps?
No, we did not actually like reverse engineer any of these apps, so we don't know whether there's like in the hidden way they're sending information back to developers. But we looked at the apps as they claim their functionalities and what functionalities they provide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Let's thank Rahul again and all the other speakers for that great session.